Buongiorno, buonasera, benvenuti amici, welcome my friends. My name is Vincenzo and welcome to my channel, and that channel is Fountain Pen Therapy. More Asvine therapy for you folks. I mean, these guys are coming out with these pens one after the other. I gotta tell you, it reminds me of what Pen BBS did years ago, where they just couldn't stop. Major difference though. Asvine clearly is targeting the Western market with some of these bigger pens, bigger nibs, etc., whereas companies like Pen BBS and I would say even more on Dieman, you can tell that their focus is more on the traditional Chinese market or Asian market, especially with those nibs. I mean, the Asvine nibs are clearly have just blown me away. Okay, they're smooth, they're wet, and they've got number 6, they've got number 8. They go from extra fine, medium. They don't have a broad, but they have a 1.1 stub, which is kind of a mixture between your classic Yowo 1.1 stub and a broad, I would say to you, that has some features of the broad because it's quite cursive. And we all seen, you know, the latest, the C80 and the C2000, be it in the stable wood or be it in the other ebonite version. Great pens. So look, we've got another one, folks. Without any further ado, Fountain Pen Therapy presents the Asvine V800 vacuum filler. Okay, so we're back. Here's the traditional box that Asvine products come in. By now, we're all used to it. A cardboard sleeve that's difficult to open, and a plastic casing, which is very efficient, by the way. Now, we'll get to that in a second. That's the traditional Asvine instruction manual. Tells you how to fill pens, etc. Going to spare you of that. Comes in this plastic sleeve with information about what to look for in the back. You can't do certain things. We've all seen this. I will spare you the details. Here's the version of the pen that I have now, delivered to me now. And I say delivered to me now because others are coming. I try to get this as quickly as possible, this V800. If, at least here in Canada, if you want the version, either the complete clear demonstrator gold trim or silver trim, you got to wait several weeks for it to arrive, almost the same delays that you experience with AliExpress. Whereas some of the other models, kind of demos, semi-demo, demonstrator, not clear, but they have various versions. There's a brown, gold, there's a blue, that are clearly more transparent and more demonstrator than this one. And then, of course, you got this green one and the sky blue, which are really more acrylic resin. There's a little bit of transparency in there, but so those are the various versions. And this, I figure everybody's going to go with the sky blue, except I figured that I'd show you the green. I know that other reviewers will also show green and blue and all the rest of it. And depending on how this pen performs, I may actually end up getting more colors. And look forward to receiving the clear demonstrator sometime soon. So for the time being, here we are. We have this one. Beautiful, beautiful pen. Now, you know, it's a big, classic shaped, kind of Mont Blanc 149-ish, I gotta say. And, you know, you've seen a lot of pens lately that kind of mimic that design because it is a very popular design. But this pen has its differences, and we will do a very detailed comparison of pens in the next segment of this review. In the meantime, let's review this pen. What I find, first of all, the resin is really, really nice. It's got some chatoyancy, it's got some depth, it's got some variation. As I mentioned, in some of the shadings of that resin, you can actually see the mechanism underneath, which is a vacuum filler, and we'll get to that in a second. So there you have it. Original clip in terms of designs, I think, for Asvine. But, you know, this roller or this ball clip we've seen before in many pens. But the way it is shaped, I would say to you, resembles mostly the Aurora shape. As you can see there, this is an Aurora Optima. It kind of resembles quite a bit the Aurora clip. Is it functional? Stiff but functional. And I think you're not going to get a hard time, you know, slipping in any fabric in there. The integration of the top part here, the slightly beveled ring at the bottom, and we'll get to the center band in a second, is done very nicely and very professionally. It's got some weight to it, to be expected, as compared to some of the other Asvines we've seen, in particular as compared to the C80, just because of, you know, the mechanism there, the vacuum fill mechanism. Now, the center band is very unique. Nice change. It's got Asvine V800 written on it. And I'll tell you what it resembles in my mind. As soon as I saw it, I knew it resembled this, which is the Plumix, I think they call it the Masterpiece model. Just that ring resembles quite a bit. And I'm sure there's others that resemble that kind of a design. But that's the first pen that came to my mind, especially with the shape. It's slightly bigger, but again, very similar shape. And we'll get to that in more detail in the next segment of this video. So there you have it. In terms of the outside, what else have I got for you here? I mean, this is well done, by the way. There is a little bit of friction there, but it's a nice, just because it's beveled, but it's not, it doesn't obstruct or, you know, cause any injuries or anything. It doesn't cut, in other words. Let's see how many turns. That's 1, 1.5, 1 3/4, I would say. Let's do that again. So that's 1, 1.5, 1 3/4. So it's 1 3/4. Seen some say that it took almost 2. I'm just wondering if I'm doing something wrong, because other reviewers mentioned 2. Mine appears to get it done. So again, that's 1. That's 1.5. And it's 1 3/4. So it's 1 3/4, at least in mine. I got the 1.1 stub. Just I love these stubs. They're juicy, they're wet, and they you can put some very nice inks and get all kinds of variation in the ink. So there you have it. It is a vacuum filler. The mechanism appears to function quite nicely. Thank you very much. I would have preferred to show you, and it looks like it's very nicely lubricated. There's a little bit of play here, as you can tell, which is, you know, kind of worrisome, but but it's okay, and it works fairly well, I would say to you. I'm not going to remove that piston or that rod. I'm sure others will show you how it's done, but it's the standard stuff, which brings me to this. Before I go any further, it does come with a little wrench, which is a nice touch, and it's got two huge, larger gaskets for the top of that mechanism, and it's got O-rings there to protect the sections in the nib, I would assume, which is a nice touch. And by the way, I played around recently with one of my V800s, and that washer or rubber washer came off. So I said to myself, wow, nice, thank God V800 is there. I may have to buy, they may get, kind of loosened after a while. So it's a nice touch to provide that. So there you have it. And it does, by the way, unscrew here, which is a very good thing because it facilitates enormously the cleaning of that pen. So you can flush it out that way. It's got an O-ring there to protect it, and you can screw that back on fairly easily. So we'll go back and make sure that's done properly. This nib can be unscrewed. I'm not going to do it. You can unscrew the nib, the whole section comes off, or you can just simply fit or unfit both the feed and the nib. That feed, I believe, is a plastic, but very nice feed at that. So there you have it. Very nicely integrated, I would say to you. Well built. What do we got inside here? Let's take a look at that. Nothing spectacular. There is a step there that will ensure some sealing, the seal. So I suspect that we will not have problems of dry nib issues in this pen, although time will tell. And I'm presenting this video immediately, but as you know, in my recaps, I will now have a section where instead of repeating things, I will be revisiting some of the recently acquired pens after weeks or days of use to point out anything that I may have noticed and that I may not have picked up in my original review. So again, just a plug for my weekly recap. Stay tuned for that. Be a loyal listener and you'll get all the current news, as they say, current news. So there you have the pen. Beautiful. In terms of comfort, nice. It's a nice size pen. It's got some heft and it's got some girth and length. Very nice. Does it post? I would say to you it posts. It becomes ridiculously big, though, again, like some of these pens often do. It is kind of weighted there. I think it's a little bit unbalanced, posted, but, not to the point where it's not usable. I think that ultimately it can be used even posted, although, as you guys know by now, it's not my preference. Now, is there anything else that I should look at? Nice touch to put, by the way, the band without exposing any of does the Optima? No, it's not the Optima that I wanted to show you, but there are other pens where I think some of the Pilot, where the center band is slightly on top, exposing the acrylic or the resin to possible damage. This does not appear to be the case. It protects it, so another nice touch by Asvine. Well designed, well built, sharp looking, great materials, as usual from Asvine. So there you have it. So stay tuned next for a comparison. I'm going to compare this pen to a bunch of pens, and then we'll take it from there. So be right back. Okay, so we're back with the pen and size comparison. As you can see, I got a few comparisons that I'd like to share with you. So we'll go from one section to the other. Let me just bring that up. First section here that you see in the comparison is what I would say are the most recent pens that I have that kind of resemble the 149, that classic design by now. As you can see, the 149 is here. I can tell you that the Asvine V800 is actually longer, as you could see. It maybe doesn't have, and I don't have my caliper here, but I think it has even the same kind of girth. But the at least it's longer. The clip is different, and that center band, they made sure that it's different. Although you can see the resemblance with this Penlux masterpiece. And then you've got the Wingsung or Junlai 630. You've got the Majon 140 and the Majon 141. As you could see, they're the 149 clones, if you will, or lookalikes, or inspired by the 149. So there is that comparison. I think that's worthwhile making. I'm going to spare you of the just the capped and uncapped version. I'll select some and come back with that in a second. Just to give you an idea, some people might wonder whether or not it's comparable to that big J16, which is a little bigger than the 146, but smaller than the 149. And the answer is no. It's not the same at all. The G16 may be just as in length, just as big, but in terms of girth, it's a 149 girth as opposed to J16. And there you have it in terms of comparing it to the Asvine V126. So you could see it's the larger version, if you will, of the 126. And here's that little washer or gasket or rubber gasket, I guess it is, stopper, if you will, that came off when I was playing around with this pen on the weekend. And so it's nice to have replacements. It's actually in this V200 that I had some problems with, and we'll come back to that in a second. So there's the comparison there. If you want to compare it to the most recent offerings, which is the Asvine C2000, I've chosen the Ebonite here, and the C80. As you can see, it's slightly shorter than the other two, but maybe a little bit girthier than the C80. And of course, completely different mechanisms. And these are cartridge converters. And this, of course, is your vacuum filler. Then the third comparison I have for you here is, and it's too bad I don't have that. I've ordered it, but I don't have it yet. The demo version of this V800, which compares to these three vacuum fillers. This is the Natami spaceship, I think they call it. This is my brand new, by the way, you haven't seen this yet, but you will soon. This is my brand new Gravitas Monster, spoilers alert, and my Asvine V200. So it's going to join these pens in terms of my vacuum fillers for the time being. So there you have, I think, a comparison of several pens. And maybe what I'll do is we'll compare some of these in an uncapped and posted version just to give you an even better idea. I'll be right back. Okay, so we're back for the writing sample. First of all, the ink. Well, the ink I'm going to choose, I swatched a recently acquired ink on this batch one paper in this Kimbor Abonici or Obonici lookalike, if you will, that I've reviewed in my last recap. And I really like Leonardo, and I just noticed there's an O missing there. Leonardo Verde Foresta. I think that's kind of a nice match for this green. So we're going to go with Leonardo, and it's got some nice sheening and shading. So that's the ink I'm going to use. And with regard to the paper, and by the way, the bottle is this one right here. That's their new kind of nude bottles, if you will. That's Verde Foresta. And then the pad I will be using, or the paper, is this Yamamoto writing pad, A5, the original Tomo River. Okay, so we will get this pen going. Now it is a 1.1 stub, and I think what I want to do is also compare it to some of the other 1.1 stubs that I have. I know that some of you have mentioned that you've seen kind of a discrepancy from pen to pen on the line of the nibs. So sometimes from pen to pen, an extra fine will look finer than the fine in another pen, etc., etc. So I'm going to take 3 1.1 stubs and compare them maybe at the end of this writing sample, just to see if there's some consistency in those nibs, at least as far as the 3 nibs that I have in my collection. Okay, so this is the subject pen. And this is the V800. I almost put 200. It's in the green. I forget what exact name they give it, but it's a green resin and silver trim. Okay. The nib is the Asvine number 8 steel 1.1 stub. The ink is Leonardo. Green Forest. Now, let's smoothness. Very smooth. Just a hint of feedback. Wetness. Very wet. Line variation, well, it's to be expected, right? Because it is a stub, so definitely you have a much wider downstroke than you have side stroke, and that's to be expected. It does have a little bit of springiness to it. There's some little bounce there. Not too much, but I can feel some softness there. Okay. Consistency. Consistency or tency, sorry about that. Can't spell. Consistency, I think, is very consistent. Very, very consistent. I would give it 8.5 on 10, just because I saw just a few little spots where it wasn't, but generally speaking, I think it's a very consistent flow there. Reverse writing. Yeah, I get an extra fine. Just hate doing reverse writing, but there you have it. It's doable. Okay. I think we've covered all bases here. Yeah, very nice. Now, in terms of, we'll do the comparison later. In terms of likes and dislikes. Okay, I like the build quality. The design is nice. They've added their own touch to that 149 inspiration, but at the end of the day, we keep saying 149, but it's a cigar-shaped pen, so I don't want you to get the idea that this is a clone. Far from it. There's a lot of differences. For design, I like the clip and the band. Okay. I like the material. I like that resin. Not the deepest of resins, but very nice. Thank you very much, especially for the price. I like the nib. The nib is really nice. This number 8. It's a nice big nib, and it's juicy. With a little bit of softness, I would say to you. Is this a go-to pen? Absolutely, 10 on 10. Very comfortable. I forgot to mention there's a little bit of a flare there. I always like these flares because it prevents my fingers from slipping down onto the nib. Go-to, 10 on 10. And value is always there with Asvine. I don't care what it costs. I think it's around $60 US, maybe even slightly less than that. You get even the some spare parts, so to speak, in this little envelope. So I think it's, and you got some choices. Dislikes, the little knob here I felt was a little so knob on the vacuum knob. The other thing is that, like a lot of vacuum fillers that are hidden by their bodies, it's difficult to see where you are. You can see a little bit of transparency, but it's stretching it. I don't think you can really tell if the pen is full or not. In this particular case, I would say to you that the first fill wasn't the greatest, okay, just by what I see, but wasn't the worst either. So I would say to you, do you need an ink window? I guess not. It's so I'm not even sure if it's a vacuum filler, unless it's a demonstrator. You won't see where you are. I don't believe they have vacuum fillers with ink windows, because I'm not sure that would serve really any purpose. So at least here you've got some transparency where you can, try to figure out. But, I think my only dislike is the knob, frankly. So there you have it. Now, why don't we, so that ends this review. Let's do some comparison. Let me just sign this. And I'll put the date that I got it. There we go. Okay, so that's that. Let's do some comparison with other. So this is the green. Now, it's a little bit unfair because it depends on the inks, right? Sorry, I'm out of focus. I'm out of picture there, out of frame. This is the Asvine C80 in that kind of blue shimmer. I think is much thicker here. And then let's see what this. Now, I can tell you that this one has got a particular problem with it, which I'm not going to correct. I just find that because the two tines may be slightly misaligned, it's giving me some great feedback that I otherwise would not have had, because the other C80 doesn't give me the same feedback. I don't know, I have a funny suspicion that it may be a little more cursive than, a little more italic than this one. In other words, it's cut off a little bit more than this one. And this is why, just listen. It's kind of giving me kind of a sailor-like feedback. that I'm not getting from either the C80 and certainly not getting from this one. Now this one is a lot smoother. But the line is much thinner than that one, and I think it's a lot thinner. And again, the inks may have some role to play there, although I got to tell you that these Leonardo inks are just fabulous. They are comparable to now in here, this is Hongdian, what do they call it, black or bluish gray or blackish, bluish gray, which is a really wet and juicy ink. But in here, this one's kind of in between. This is slightly less than that one, and this one's even thinner. So I am not getting a completely consistent line. Now, before I pronounce myself on that, I'm going to have to do a lot more playing around and maybe, emptying all these pens and putting in the same ink and same with the same paper, same ink, and see what gives. But it's something that I'm looking at more deeply. I'm not overly displeased by the lack of consistency, if any, in the line. I'm still getting the line variation, frankly. It's just that some reviewers have said, look, if I order an extra fine, I expect to get an extra fine, or if I order a fine, I expect to get a fine and not a medium, as several of my viewers have pointed out to me as well. But you know what? Stay tuned. That may be something we have to take a look at, and the more I expand my collection of all these nibs, the more I will be able to give you a worthwhile comparison. And that's what my weekly recap is all about. So you can join me there, and I'll do the follow-ups as they come along, just for your interest and your information. 10 on 10, folks. Another winner from Asvine. I love the pen. I think it's going to be another pen that I'm going to get in all kinds of resins and looks, just because I know I'm going to use this, maybe put in a lot different colors. Now we've got the green, we get the blue, and we get some of the demos to give you red, etc., etc. So, yeah, you've done it again, Asvine. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this. Enjoy your pens. Enjoy your Asvine pens. Be well. Ciao.